Thank you all for joining us for the Grad School Prep Series Crafting Your Letter of Intent workshop. Joining us today is Kris Gunawan, Psychology Assistant Professor in Residence. In this workshop, we will gain an understanding of the structure and components of an effective letter of intent, including how to share your academic achievements, research interests, career goals, and so much more. I'm going to hand it over to Kris to get us started.
Hi, hello everybody, and feel free to interrupt at any time when I'm presenting. Oftentimes students just call me Dr. G just to keep it simple. So, or you could call me Kris. I don't really care. Just let me know if you have any questions or anything that you would like to comment on. And so we're going to get started on this workshop on crafting your letter of intent. And so before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that we'll start off with discussing the purpose of a letter of intent, and then we'll get into expectations and general formatting, as well as how to go about organizing your narrative for your letter of intent, and then tips for an effective statement. And you'll see that from time to time, I'll be referring to a letter of intent as a statement. And then at the very end, feel free to ask any questions or any comments that you'd like me to hear about. So let's start off with the purpose of a letter of intent. There are different names that you could use. So in various grad programs, they might refer to it as a statement of purpose or a personal statement. What you want to make sure that you follow is whatever title they give you in that graduate program. Now, the purpose of a letter of intent is to provide you with information about who you are, what you've done, and why you are pursuing the graduate degree that you're pursuing. And so this is a way for you to really showcase things like your achievements, your experiences, your qualifications, your strengths, your training, and your personality, anything that you want to address to the graduate selection committee members, all right? And so when we're looking at a letter of intent, just be aware that sometimes graduate programs might have a specific focus for what they consider a letter of intent. So if they call it a statement of purpose, it tends to focus more so on academic and professional accomplishments, as well as future plans of what you intend to do with the degree. Whereas with a personal statement, your main focus tends to be more about who you are and why you would fit into the program. And so it almost has a biographical tone to it. But if you happen to be applying to a program and it just says statement of purpose or personal statement without any instructions, my recommendation would be to blend in these two types, which we're going to discuss today. And so just things to consider if we're focusing on a statement of purpose and it happens to be just more academic and professionally directed, then you want to probably answer some of these questions, which are: what are your research interests and why? Who would you like to work with if you were admitted into the program and why? What professional training have you had in the past? What are your strengths and weaknesses? That, although you probably want to focus more on the strengths, but it's good to address some of those weaknesses, or what I refer to as challenges that you were capable of overcoming. What are your career goals? Describe your accomplishments, and what do you hope to gain in the graduate program? If it's a personal statement and its primary focus is on a personal statement, it might be that you should address things like, what should admissions committee members know about you? What do you aspire to become and why? Where do you see yourself in the future? What made you pursue the field? How can the graduate program help you? And what challenges have you observed or had to overcome that made you pursue that particular field? And so again, be aware that graduate programs might have their own types of instructions, so you want to follow whatever instructions they provide for you. All right. So, what are graduate programs expecting for your letter of intent? It really varies from program to program. So, there might be certain programs where they will require you to write up a situation that will help them to see whether or not you are fit for the program. Others are going to be very vague. They'll just say, submit a personal statement. In that case, I would suggest combining the information that I have previously given to you from the prior slides by combining those questions that you saw for a statement of purpose and a personal statement. So always double check what you need to fulfill this particular requirement. And just be aware that graduate selection committee members are looking to see whether you have the potential to do well in their program, because it's just as much of an investment on them to have you in the program. And so one thing that I want you to think about is you want to put your foot in their shoes. And so oftentimes when you're writing a letter of intent, regardless of whether it's a personal statement or a statement of purpose, what I see with students is they just focus on me, this is what I did, this is what I've done, and without really taking into account of what is this program about and how do I qualify to be admitted into that program. All right. So, some things to account for are some of the general formattings. And so make sure you have your full name on either the left side or the right side at the very top of the document. What I've seen with students is they sometimes put it in the header and then they add page numbers so that the graduate program selection committee members can know which page it is. And also make sure to provide the title, center it. Sometimes I would bold it, but make sure the title is the title that is requested from that graduate program. Don't just provide a generic statement of purpose when they're asking for a personal statement. Tweak it so that it fits that graduate program. And then also follow any guidelines that they've provided for you. So for example, sometimes programs will ask you to type it up in a Times New Roman, 12-point size font. It needs to be double space and in a 1-inch margin. And that tends to be the most common type, but just be very cautious of those small things, because what you don't realize is if you can't follow directions, it says a lot about you. And so you're not being meticulous, you're not following instructions well, and that can be problematic. So you're giving them a hint of you not being as careful as you should be. Know the maximum number of pages you need to write up. Sometimes it might be 1 page. Sometimes they'll require that you can write a maximum of 4 pages. Just don't go beyond with what they are requesting, although typically it tends to be between 1 and 3 pages long. Right? And be aware that this is a letter of intent, so it's a personal statement or a statement of purpose, but sometimes they will require other writing samples. And sometimes programs might ask you to provide a writing sample if there isn't any sort of like statement of purpose or personal statement, and they just request a writing statement. I would suggest using that opportunity as your letter of intent. That's just my opinion on it, but it will provide them with an opportunity of knowing who you are. And so there are sometimes programs where they'll just say in their requirement a writing sample and your curriculum vitae, and that's as far as you need, and your letters of recommendation. Then I would suggest you could provide them with a writing sample of what you've done, but it would be ideal to allow them to know who you are. So again, this is just an opinion, but it might be something that give you an upper hand, and especially if the program's extremely competitive. All right. Make sure to proofread. Be careful with your spelling and grammar. Again, Careless mistakes will indicate that you're not observant. And in grad school, you want to be as meticulous as possible. You want to be very careful with your work. You want to provide quality work. And so by making these mistakes, it goes to show that you probably aren't as focused. And so that obviously is not what you want to convey when you're submitting an application. And then make sure your writing is in a positive tone. And I know from time to time, students might address a situation that they've been in and it might have been traumatic, but don't go dark on them. There should be some light, right, at the end of the tunnel. It's because it sometimes can sound like you're downplaying yourself, or you might end up sounding more self-defeating. And it should sound more of an excited tone. It should show that you're prepped and ready for this new endeavor in life, right? And so just be very careful, because sometimes and you could address those issues or situations, but make sure you don't dwell on it, because especially keep it brief, and then because you want to focus on why that program that you're applying to is the right program for you, right? And keep your sentences in an active voice, meaning that you did this, you did that, rather than this was done by me. You want to make it more direct. And you also want to provide a strong voice. What I mean by that is, I've given you an example of this, where instead of saying I think or I feel, you might want to use words like I know or I believe, because that sense that conveys a strong sense of confidence that you are ready to apply for this program, and for that program to admit you, because you know what you want and how this program will be of use to you, and how it will prepare you for your future career, right? And so with that said, and also we need I do want to address clarity, organization, and flow. And so your writing should always be clear. Avoid using any sort of cliches where it's something like, I am applying to this program because I want to help people. Well, I think everyone else in that program might want to help people as well. So that doesn't make you as competitive, right? So you want to focus on things like, oh, I would love to serve in a population where individuals have dealt with traumatic brain injury. Now you're being much more specific, right? And then don't use jargons. And so oftentimes students will use acronyms. So instead of saying TBI, well, make sure to mention it's a traumatic brain injury, right? You want to be very specific, because maybe it might be that the person reading it might not know that particular area that you're pursuing. Be direct with what you want to say. Don't go all flowery, and don't be redundant. Remember, you want to use every sentence to add on information about who you are. So don't be wordy by being redundant, because then you're just being verbose. Provide examples to show what you have done in terms of your experience, training, and accomplishments. And I will mention something that aligns with that bullet statement. When you're writing your statement or your letter of intent, this isn't an opportunity to just list your accomplishments. You actually have to explain what you did and how it flows well into the program that you're going for. And so I've seen students who would say things like, I have been involved in various organizations, such as so-and-so, and I was the officer for this other thing, and that's as far as it goes. You want to describe what exactly did you do in that position. And so that's what I mean by not listing, because what you'll know is that most graduate programs will probably ask you for a curriculum vitae, which is an academic resume, right? And so organize your thoughts so that the reader knows where you're going. And to help you out, I will be providing you with slides so that you don't end up with a writer's block and in the subsequent slides after this. So think about how your paragraphs will target you as of why you're a good candidate for that graduate program. Make sure the flow of your narrative is smooth. Again, don't be listing positions because it sounds very choppy. It's as though you're just describing what your resume is. And that's not what the whole intention of a letter of intent is supposed to come across. It should actually describe more so of who you are and how it makes you more aligned with that program that you're going for. And so elaborate by giving context, but providing more meaning, providing some examples of what you've accomplished for the positions you're addressing. Right? So how could you structure your narrative for your personal statement or statement of purpose? The structure that I'm going to be providing for you would be if there is no prompt given from that graduate program. And so this structure is just a suggestion, but it would help you to really figure out how can I outline my thoughts so that it flows well. So a general way that you can structure your statement is by dividing it into 3 parts. And so the first part is really introducing yourself, which we're going to discuss next. And so I would recommend about no more than a paragraph, although sometimes some individuals might need 2 paragraphs, but don't go beyond that because you want to focus on how you fit the program. And so the second part would be experiences and skills and training that you have had in the past. And you'll see that you might have 1 to 2 paragraphs, and it really is dependent upon what type of graduate program you're pursuing. And then at the very end, you want to focus on your future plans or future goals, and that would be about a paragraph. And it's a way to close off your statement of purpose or a personal statement. So in the first part, it should answer the following questions. And again, this is just a guideline. So everyone's way of starting off their first paragraph will differ depending on the field that they're focusing on and also what they have to say. So for instance, what are you applying for and why are you interested in obtaining the graduate degree? We're speeding up the process. What made you interested in pursuing the field? So careful in not making it an autobiographical paragraph. Keep it short and meaningful. So some people will start off with, I am interested in pursuing a master's degree in blah, 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 blah. Or some will start off with a story. And if you're going in that direction, just be careful that it doesn't sound like a diary, right? And so it's supposed to be focused on why it gets into you wanting to go for that degree. And so why did you select the graduate program and what do you hope to achieve by being in the program? And so if you could answer, so these questions are just to give you ideas. It's not a particular order where it's like, oh, I have to answer the first question and then follow it up with the second question. You want to make it flow based on what is of interest to you in your field, right? So for instance, if you're in the health profession, it might be an experience that you might have had in your family, or it might be an experience where you've served in some capacity at a hospital, or it could be whatever it might be that had driven you into pursuing the graduate program that you're going for, all right? With part 2, the number of paragraphs that you would end up writing up is really dependent on the field that you're going for. So the first paragraph would be something that everyone should probably write about, which is elaborating on what you have done in the past that makes you well prepared for the program. So what have you accomplished academically and professionally? You want to describe your accomplishments and experiences that can show helpful examples of your readiness as a graduate student for that particular program. So you could discuss things like your personal experience, your professional training, your academic activities, your research involvement, and how that's relevant to the graduate program that you're focusing on. If oftentimes when you're going for a PhD program, this is more so for those of you who have more of a research bent. You want to probably talk about how your interest in the program aligns with some of the people who conduct the types of research that you're interested in. And so it really varies depending on the program. And so if you're going for more of a practice-based type of degree, like a medical degree or like a law degree or anything that is just practice focused, this might not pertain to you, but I would recommend elaborating on your services and how it really relates to the area of interest that you're going for. But and also it doesn't require some sort of an advisor-student work relationship where you don't have a mentor. This is something that you might skip on. But if this is something that you need to do in terms of research, then do your research by going into the department's website and looking at the different faculty members. And for those of you who might be in that position, I would suggest going for at least 2 to 3 faculty members that you might possibly be able to work with, because you might not know whether that one particular member that you were interested in is actually accepting anyone. And so it's always good to provide them with options, right? For part 3, we're now bringing closure to a statement of purpose or personal statement. So you want to end it by showing how motivated you are to be in the program if you're admitted. And so keep it positive. And so address why you would fit in the program. But here's the thing that we often, that students often forget to talk about is how might they benefit having you in the program? Is it that you're serving in an area that for instance, if it's a clinic, what do you look forward to in being a part of that program? And it could be anything. And so, but you'll have to look at their mission statement and the goals. And it actually is a good thing to look into the program, looking at the courses that you have to take, and maybe it's an internship that you have to go through, some sort of a practicum. Well, it might be good to align it with your knowledge of what the program does, because that shows that you've done your research. And so where do you see yourself in the future after graduating with a degree? And you don't want to just talk about all of your past experiences. You want to look forward, right? And so we're not just saying, I did this, I did that. Otherwise, it's just very choppy. At that point, you might as well have just said, please just review my curriculum vitae, right? Because you're just listing at that point. And so here are just some tips for an effective statement or letter of intent. So regardless of whether it's a statement of purpose or a personal statement, do not list your accomplishments. Remember that oftentimes you'll need to submit a curriculum vitae, an academic resume. And so don't waste space in that letter of intent by just listing those positions, because then you're not providing more information to the selection committee of who you really are. And then think about how you can contribute to the graduate program as much as how the graduate program can help you. How do your goals align with the program's goals? Oftentimes, when we write a statement of purpose or a personal statement, it sounds very self-serving. I want to do this, I want to do that, but how can you, with that degree, serve the community? Or how will that degree benefit not just within the program, but for the community at large, right? And so don't just say, this is what I've done in the past. That's great, but acknowledge, how does this pertain to you if you were in that career after getting the degree? And so that, hopefully that will help you out. So avoid sounding very self-serving. You also want to show that you're out there for a purpose, not just for the name, the title of the name, or just going for the degree because you want to have a doctor in front of your name. Because if that's the case, then you'll be in a rude awakening. It's very anticlimactic. You'll just have a piece of paper that says, Doctor to blah, blah, blah. And trust me, yeah, you'll get over it once you see that piece of paper. Right? And so keep your information relevant to what you are applying for when you're writing up your narrative. Do not treat this like a diary about your past life. Mention your future goals and plans, not just your past experiences, and maintain some optimism to actually not some, keep it optimistic because it can go very dark sometimes. And some of the personal statements and statement of purpose that I've read in the past almost sounded like they're going for the program because they want to self-diagnose. That is not the best intent of going to a program. And so make sure that when you're applying to the program, it's an investment of something that you can do for the community and for whatever area that you're interested in. It's not just to serve yourself. I hope that helps because that will make you think differently in how you write up your letter of intent. And so what I teach a careers course, something that I often tell my students is to think about if you're in the shoes of someone who's going to read your statement of purpose or personal statement, why should they have you for the next step, which is probably the graduate interview? And so don't just think about yourself as an applicant, but rather how would the other person on the other side see you and how you've written up the narrative for that letter of intent, right? And so with that, thank you. And if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions.
I would like to pose a question.
Yeah.
Just kind of been on my mind since you were speaking about it. For those applications that don't ask for the letter of intent or personal statement, but ask for the writing sample, would you ever perhaps provide like a course writing sample or research, but have like an introduction that's more about you personally?
I would sneak in a writing sample because if you only have one file to upload, you might do like a letter of intent and then follow it up with a writing sample just in case. Because typically if they say we want a writing sample, they won't have any page numbers that are like limiting them from having to submit whatever Word file, but also be careful because sometimes you only have a limited like memory file, so you don't want to go on and on. It shouldn't be like 10 pages, right? You probably won't be able to upload that file. And so just be strategic where you're now including something about yourself, but then you're also including something of whatever project you've written up as a paper. That's just my 2 cents on it, but it's like, it's just being sneaky, right? Adding more information, yeah.
And then real technical, do you recommend always uploading these documents as PDFs?
Yes, because you never know if you might have accidentally submitted a draft. And so by creating a PDF file, it's like the final version. At least that's my perspective on it. Because if you do a Word file, it might be that it was draft 5 and it should have been like draft 6. So when you do a PDF file, you're able to look at it as its final draft.
And I think the word too, like I had it in the past, format changes, something shifts.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't remember this being this much different. But
Yeah, but it forces you to look at your PDF file and see, all right,
Yes.
did I make any mistakes? And then if you did a PDF file and you saw the error, delete that PDF file and redo it again, right? That's my thought.
That's smart.
Mhm.
But floor is right now open for questions. You guys can unmute yourselves or directly chat us and we'll ask on your behalf too. I actually liked when you used that example, like I think versus I now,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So do you, because I think like it's applicable to anywhere in life, you know, do you have any other like examples?
Yeah, so
Sticks out.
as an example, so I believe that I am well qualified for this program because of the training that I have had in the past, right? As opposed to, I think I qualify for this, now you're showing some uncertainty, right? Or I feel that I qualify. Well, now it sounds like it's all just feelings, and so I've got this tingling feeling that I think I can do this, right? And as opposed to, you know, I know that I'm capable of being a part of the program because of these experiences, so that I can contribute to the graduate program. Do you see it gives off a different feel of that individual's confident because they know they've done their homework, they've done everything that they need to be able to apply to this program with all of the necessary tools to become a strong graduate student in the future.
That's a good thing to watch out for. Now I wonder if I did that mistake or not. But hey, I'm in the grad school, so.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I have a question, to follow up on that.
Mhm.
So if people are, I don't know, generally maybe a little uncomfortable with that kind of language because they feel like they're bragging, do you have any
So
advice?
oftentimes, it doesn't sound like bragging, it ends up sounding weak. Now, at an interview, a graduate interview, tone it down, because you don't want to be sounding conceited. But on paper, when that's all they have to describe you, you want to show what makes you the best of the best, because you shouldn't just rely on those letters of recommendation. You want to vouch for yourself, show that, hey, this is why I'm a strong candidate for your program. And if often what I see from reading statement of purpose or personal statements is that students are so modest that it's so empty, it doesn't show that they've done anything. And so you want to make known that, hey, I've done this, I've done that, but obviously elaborating with some context of why that position really matters and how that is connected to the degree that you're going for.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's a great point that in the interview you kind of toned it down, though.
Yeah, because you could convey yourself with a little arrogance at that point, and it could be off-putting, right? You don't want to sound like a know-it-all, or else what's the purpose of you going for graduate school if you think you've got everything?
Yeah. Who would you not recommend graduate school to?
For those who, because I've had students telling me, do I have to go to grad school? I really hate reading and writing. Well, they might be more intuitive. They're like, some students have street smarts, and I envy those folks where it's like you're a go-getter, you can be an entrepreneur, you can go out there. Then I would recommend not pursuing grad school because you're just wasting your potential for one of being more successful in another area of a profession that some people might be weak. I'm very scholarly, but I've had to train myself to be street smarts as well, so, and not just book smarts.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
I might pose another question.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
Others on the call.
Oh yeah, no problem.
When you talked about conveying optimism, and I took away in terms of what you can contribute to the field, to the program. How how would students convey optimism like about their own personal past?
Yeah, so for instance, maybe it's a traumatic experience that they had witnessed or they've gone through. And then having to self-reflect and seeing the need to assist others who might have that particular situation, and learning that through those challenges, there are ways to navigate and find treatment or interventions, and really figuring out how to find solutions for it. That's taking something that might sound very dark to, hey, but there's a way, and I'm pursuing this degree so that I can be of service to those who might have a similar experience, where their family members dealt with some sort of addiction or whatever it might be, and swaying the perspective to knowing these problems that I've witnessed. My hope is to find ways to be of help to them, or to be a support, and knowing the necessary tools to be able to tackle that particular circumstance or situation that they're experiencing. So it's not just, well, and ever since it's just, I've just been facing a lot of depression. You're going to struggle in grad school if, like, you want to be able to say, I've overcame these obstacles, and I hope to be able to use what I've experienced and the challenges that I've faced by being an advocate, or being someone who is capable of connecting and empathizing with these individuals, right? And notice that it's reframing something than just saying, well, I'm in this situation and that's that. And so that's really leading them downwards, and you want to show there's hope. And part of that hope is being a part of this program so that I can be someone who is that person to contribute to those struggles that others might face. Or it might be a family member, it might be, but it's also being very sensitive to those situations as well, because sometimes it almost comes across as I'm self-diagnosing, and by going to this program, it's helping me, and well, the goal isn't just to help yourself. Again, remember, make sure the narrative isn't self-serving. That your goal, if you're in that career, your goal is to figure out how can I contribute to society in that particular field. Otherwise, it's just, I'm just doing it for myself, and that could be a little, you want to direct yourself with a goal in mind that's not just about you. I think that's important that we often.
Any other questions? We'll give a little bit of time
Yeah, no problem.
for people that are joining us virtually. Did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, thank
Everything's
you.
covered.
The one thing that I forgot to include for the tips is your first draft shouldn't be your final draft. Have other people read through your statement of purpose or personal statement. And again, the guide that I gave you guys with like parts 1, 2, and 3, that's if they're just saying submit a personal statement or submit a statement of purpose, then you want to combine the idea of connecting of who you are with the work that you've done and what you hope to pursue and what you want to do in the future. Otherwise, if you're just looking at the personal statement questions, it's just talking about who you are. And for the statement of purpose, it's just talking about what you've done academically. And so you want to put them together so they see a bigger picture of who you are. And it took me a lot of drafts when I was an undergrad. I think I wrote about 5 drafts because I had multiple people read through it to see, did it make sense to you? And so you don't want to just write something and just submit it because they might find that someone might not be, some people are good with identifying content and others are more focused on looking at grammatical errors. And so you want to see people's strengths and how they can detect something that they can find from your narrative.
Sounds different perspectives or feedback, yeah.
And have the writing center help as well, right? Get other resources that you have on campus. You know, sometimes students go to professors, but professors can be overwhelmed with multiple things that they have to do. And so go to the writing center or possibly go to the career services. I don't know if they offer any suggestions as well.
They definitely have workshops on like cover letters, so maybe there's crossover there. Academic Success Center.
Yes, Academic Success Center as well. Your friends can be of help as well. But I'm in the psychology department. If any of you need to see me in person, I'm more than happy to give you any feedback.
All right, if there aren't any more questions, right, in the chat, I think we can end today's session. But before we end today's session, we would like to thank our presenter, Kris Gunawan. And then thank you for our participants for joining us today. Before you all log off, please take a moment to fill out the survey. Other than that, thank you so much.
Okay,
Again,
no
thank you
problem.
for your time and your expertise.
Yeah, no problem.
And everybody have a nice day.
Good luck.